Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are on this earth. Hold on, let me put this straight over here. Hold on. I'm trying to like this. Yes, that's how it should be. Good. As always, I'll ask you to let me know in the live chat if you can hear me. That's the first thing I always do. So again, if you're here, let me know that you're here and let me know if you can hear me clearly. I'll wait a few minutes before I begin. Again, let me know if you're here and let me know if you can hear me clearly. Good. Carol, thanks for being here. Gonna wait a few minutes until the others come in. And then I'm going to begin with today's teaching. Maria Garcia, thanks for being here. Good. You can hear me too. Today we're going to talk about building and maintaining economic relevancy. That will be the topic of today's live stream. Yesterday, the live stream was about false breakthroughs. If you haven't seen that live stream, you can watch it afterwards. I have some interesting data in it also. In this live stream, we're going to talk about how to build and maintain economic relevancy as a people. And there are some myths about economics and finances that we need to unlearn also. I'll be discussing those in this live stream. And as always, I'll wait the first 5 minutes of the live stream for people to get in. Let me know they're here. So again, for those who just came in, let me know in the live chat that you're here and you can hear me clearly. Good. And for those that are here already, when you ask questions on the live stream, focus on the topic of the live stream. If you have other questions, you can email me. And later I'll put my email in the description after this live stream. Mm-hmm. Good. We're still going to wait 2 more minutes. Then we're going to begin. For those already here, you can read Psalms 23. Meanwhile, the 2 minutes pass by. Okay? If you're here, let me know in the live chat if you can hear me clearly. I repeated myself for those who came in new. I always do that in the early minutes before I really begin to teach in the live stream? Yeah, boy, Reese. Okay, thanks for being here. All right. Economic relevancy. What is it and why does it matter? Well, it matters. Those that claim that economic relevancy doesn't matter, they're either lying or they're delusional. Some are misinformed, but even when you're misinformed, eventually you realize that economic relevancy is important in daily life. So, when it comes to daily life, people often don't think why they're doing certain things. They just do them out of habit. If I would ask you why English is your native language, you would say, well, because of my parents, because where I grew up. If I would ask you why is your first name, why don't people call you differently, you would state that it has to do with your parents have decided to call you. If I would ask you why you have certain emotional tendencies, people now become a bit defensive, saying, well, that's just the way I am. But if you ask deeper, people would have to admit that most of their behaviors and their attitudes are conditioned into them. They're not native to themselves. So, just as your native language is not native to you, you received it by the community you grew up in, the same way economic attitudes are imputed on you from the time you're born. And those economic attitudes are trained into you by society. So by the time you're 12, 30 years old, you'll be thinking according to an economic model. And because you think in terms of an economic model, you will relate to others based on this economic model. And you'll be thinking that you're the one developing your own ideas and your own outlook on life. But that's not the case. That outlook on life has been modeled to you. And because it has been modeled to you, you adapted to it. And your adaptation feels so personal that you think that is you that did it. Well, you did cling onto the model, but the model did not originate with you. And even that clinging is only because that model has been presented to you as something worthwhile. So, economic models have been imprinted on our brains from the time we're growing up. We did not choose them voluntarily. So, now that you know this, it's also important to realize that all economic models are biased. I don't care which economic model you take, all economic models are biased. Because the economy is about keeping people in harmony and in movement. Because human beings are designed to be in movement. Human beings are not designed to stand still. We're not plants. We're not trees. We're meant to be in movement. However, the movement of human beings has to be regulated to a specific end. Or in other words, every human community, because we are community creatures, needs to have a goal that motivates the people in movement. And the goal is kept alive by the leaders of the community. And in most human communities, you have a male figure who becomes the fatherly and brotherly figure that symbolizes the ambition of the community. And those men often became the kings or the priest class or whatever that you give to them. That's how the human species is. We are designed to be part of groups, and being part of groups, we are designed to follow a collective ambition. And we model when I'm saying we, not really model, but we shape ourselves as adults after the ambition in the community. That's how humans are. So every economic model is biased because there is some collective ambition that it promotes and others that it excludes. And an economy can only work if if the overwhelming majority of the people agree with a collective ambition. The overwhelming majority of the population must not only agree with the ambition being worthwhile, they must perceive the ambition as being logical, natural, and the best possible option there is. And the best way to motivate a people into an economic model is to have another economic model that's frowned upon. For example, in countries where they adhere to capitalism, they look down on socialism. And they use an excuse, well, the Soviet Union killed a lot of people, so socialism doesn't work. So they may say something like that. Or if you are in communist China, quote unquote communist, you may say that capitalist countries have no values, that the women walk around like whores and all of that. So for an economic model to work, people must see it as worthwhile and as the best possible option. So that implies that even if they don't agree with every aspect of the economic model, they will agree with maintaining it because it benefits them. Because when a group agrees with an economic model, it gives them a sense of unity, and the sense of unity makes people familiar to one another. And because they're familiar with one another, they will be more at peace and more at ease with one another. So having a stable economy is relevant for human well-being. So without an economic model, no human community could function. That's correct. That's the way it is. Economics know this, politicians know this, social scientists know this, and people who use common sense will understand this also. So, before I continue, did you understand everything I've explained till now about economic models? Let me know in the live chat. I'll wait. Okay, Maria understands. That's good. Okay. So now that we know about economic models, now let me give an example. Let me give a few examples for you to see why economic relevancy is important. Let's say you're going to town. Okay, Ava, they're going to wrap it up within a minute. I've just explained onto them why economic models matter and how economic models motivate people to cooperate and to live with one another. But if you missed the first part, don't worry, you can watch it back later, and I'll kind of repeat it in different words in the rest of the live stream. Now give an example. So let's say now you have your family and you want to give a party for your 15-year-old daughter. Okay? What do? You purchase the items for the party. You invite the people to the party. And then the people come to the party and they celebrate the meeting. Now, is the party revolving around your daughter, or is it revolving around the community? Answer that to me. Just answer me in the live chat. Does it revolve around your daughter or does it revolve around the community? Gotta wait a minute more till I get another answer. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So many of you say the daughter. And that may appear to be the case. But that's not the case. Let me explain. The daughter is turning 15 years old. That means she's not a little baby anymore, she's not a little child. She's maturing into a grown woman with a sexual capacity. So she's able to give birth, she's able to be someone's girlfriend, someone's wife. So she will be perceived as a desirable sexual option. So it's a change that's happening. And this is a change that will affect the community. So it's important for her to be incorporated in the expectations of that community. Because let's say that this daughter ends up sleeping around here and there. She'll be sleeping around with other people's boyfriends, other people's husbands, and that will cause a lot of social distrust in the community. And social distrust will provoke fear and violence. So nobody wants that. So people want to be secured that her sexual activity will not harm the community. So for that to happen, the people must perceive her as part of the community. So when she reaches the age of where sexual activity becomes possible, you have this party. People, it appears to be about her, but it's about the community. People that come to this party will now be introduced to this young woman with a sexual capacity, and they now will embrace the fact that she is capable of both sexual activity as well as bonding with men, and that she's a sexual option, and that the community will experience the consequence thereof. And because she goes through this ritual called this birthday party, she now feels bonded to the community, and she will be this will be an incentive to her to model her sexual behavior after the expectations of the community. And the community is happy with this because that gives them a sense of security. So it's not about the daughter, even though it's a birthday party of the daughter, it's about the community. Because the people you invite must be willing to accept the invitation. It's also about showing the community that the community matters. Because you could also celebrate the birthday party with only your daughter and your son and your spouse inside. But if you do that, the community will feel excluded. And when the community feels excluded, they will retaliate one way or the other. Retaliation can be that later rumors are spread around about your daughter, or that when your daughter becomes sexually active, they begin to call her all kinds of weird names. Why? Because the people felt rejected by you not including them. By you setting an invitation, you recognize them so they feel validated, and if they turn it down, they can't blame you anymore. But if you don't invite them, they'll be upset. So that party is about validating the community. And by validating the community will include you in its economy. By being included in the economy of the community, you are secured of an income and secured of your survival. That's how you see that a simple thing as a birthday party is not about celebrating someone's date of birth. It is a social ritual to secure your position in the economy. Now, before I continue, do you understand the first example I've used? Let me know in the live chat. The reason I'm asking this is because I want you to learn from what I'm saying here. I'm not coming online just to talk. I want you to learn. Okay, people understood it. So I'm going to give another example. This may be a bit more obvious, but okay. Let's say you have a Muslim, you have some Muslim migrants in the community. Let's say there you have some Muslim migrants in, let's take a country. Let's say somewhere in Central America, Honduras, for example. Just making up. I'm making up an example. And now people have to register for a passport. And there are regulations on how your passport picture has to look like. And then you have these Muslim women who want to go with a headscarf on their passport. Now, what would the government of Honduras say? No, we as a government, we decided this. Okay, but let's say now that those Muslim people want this, but they don't get it. And they feel upset that they have to show, their women have to show their face completely on a passport. Let's say now that the imams of the Muslim community then send a statement to the government saying, okay, this is what our people want. For this reason, we have been polite and contributing citizens to the Republic of Honduras. Please consider us. If this doesn't happen, what happens next? Economic sanctions. The Muslim entrepreneurs will stop trading with Honduras. And they will send a message to the Islamic world that these people are hostile to Muslims. And what happens? In general, other Muslim institutions will say, okay, we're going to ban products from Honduras. We're not going to do business with the country anymore. What's going to happen? Within a month, the economic sanctions will hit Honduras. It will hurt the Honduran population. And before you know it, the president of Honduras will ask the imams to send a representative, and they're going to negotiate. And before you know it, on the passports, Muslim women are allowed to wear a headscarf. What happened in this example? You had a group of people who were a minority living in a country. They were living in another community. So you had Muslims living in a Roman Catholic community. In this Roman Catholic community, you had a cartel, a Spanish-speaking cartel that governed that community. And its military cartel came with an expectation, and the people who were familiar with this cartel governing them got along with it. But you had a minority there that didn't want to go get along with it. Now, the minority had no military to dethrone that Roman Catholic cartel in Honduras. But what they did have was economic relevancy. And because they were economically relevant in Honduras, they used their economic relevancy to shut down big parts of the Honduran economy. And because that impact was too big, people realized, okay, in the future, when we come to legislation, we must consider the Muslim minority. Because if we don't consider them, we're in trouble. It doesn't matter if you want to consider them or not. We have nothing to want. We have no option. They are relevant. Because they are relevant, there is no option in ignoring them. So, before I continue, who understands the parable that I just gave? Let me know if you understand it in the live chat. Good. Anyone else? Do you understand it? In this live stream, for those who just arrived, we're talking about economic relevancy and why it's important. I've explained about economic models in the first part. Then I gave two examples, and during the live stream, you'll catch up because the subject is integrated in the rest of of the live stream. So, as we can see now, being economically relevant is important, both as a group as an individual or as families. Let me give another example. Let's say now that we go to Japan. We have a guy called Taro, and Taro is a dark-skinned Japanese man. Because in Japan, you also have a group, a part of the population is just dark, like Africans. They are from Japan, but they're dark people, dark-skinned Japanese people. And this guy, he was fired from his job. There was some argument with some coworker that didn't add up. Within 2 months, Taro left Japan, where he was born. What happened? This Taro, because his group, which is part of the Japanese community, lacks economic relevancy, people got away with walking all over him. And because the Japanese society doesn't want to admit that they have dark-skinned people of their own, Taro was in a disadvantage. And because his own dark-skinned Japanese people were divided, he was not treated very well. Because this is what you need to understand. As a human being, you'll be perceived as a group you belong to. You will not be perceived as an individual. You will be perceived as a group you belong to. For example, if in a country, mainstream media keeps showing you images of Arab people committing terror attacks, if they keep doing that, after a while, the population gets used to this seeing Arabs committing terror attacks. So what happens next time you see an Arab walking down in the street? Unconsciously, they are in agreement with him being a potential terrorist. So he is treated as a group he belongs to. And how that group is perceived is how they will perceive him. If you live in a country or in a community where racism is high, and let's say you have two black people, one is completely dark, like Hamites, and one is a bit light-skinned, like I am. What's going to happen? The one that's dark will be ignored more often than the one that's a bit more light-skinned. Why? Because you are perceived as a group you belong to. You're not perceived as an individual. And that's what a lot of people get wrong. They think they're perceived as an individual, but no, you're perceived as a group you belong to. That's why when you say in some places that you are a Christian, people kind of become upset with you. Why? Because a lot of bad stuff was done by people that claim to be Christian while they were not. So now that you come out as a Christian, they will treat you as a group you belong to. That's why you have some Christians saying, no, I'm not a Christian. I'm a Methodist. I'm a Catholic. They'll come all types of other labels if they find out that the group they belong to is perceived badly. So for an economy to work, the group to whom the economy applies must be perceived well. And for that group to be perceived well, they will show off successes of the group to both group members and to the outside world. And if an economy of a community works well, everyone from that community, wherever they are on the world, will receive basic decency in treatment. That's how it works amongst human beings, especially in this fallen world. If the economy of a community works well, everyone as part of that community will receive a basic decent treatment. But if the economy of a community does not work well, if it's defective or is perceived as the laughing stock of the world, then everyone as part of the community will suffer bad treatment for being part of that community. So economic relevancy also has to do with how you're treated by the outside world. That's why the Apostle Paul told us, let us act as wise. Don't, because the days are evil. That's what the Apostle Paul told them. The Apostle Paul was quite smart. He had knowledge of how the world really worked. So, that is why, as believers, we ought to be economically relevant. When you're economically relevant, you have options in day-to-day interactions. When you are economically relevant, you have options, and because you're relevant, they cannot ignore you nor your interests. When you're not relevant, nobody cares. When you're not relevant, you can be forgotten. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because when you can be forgotten, you can also be victimized and nobody cares. That's why in the world, all groups, whether it's a community or an ethnicity that's bigger, or maybe it's just a group of people with the same interests, for example, people that love football or people that love to cosplay or whatever, every group seeks economic relevancy. And every group, when they sense that their economic relevancy is diminishing, they'll become uncomfortable and they'll fight to preserve their economic relevancy. No group in their right mind, as a collective, would allow outsiders to bring down their economic relevancy. None. Remember what I said, all economic models are biased. That is why, if you're a foreigner, let's say you're from Ghana and you move to Britain, they expect you to integrate in British society. Why? It's not just about speaking the language, because maybe you're from Ghana, you can speak English very well, but they want you to get along with the vision or the ambition that governs British society. Because once you agree with that, you become part of that economy and you're not a threat anymore. But let's say you move from Ghana to Britain, but you don't integrate. And let's say now more people from Ghana go to Britain and do the same thing. Before you know it, you have groups of people from Ghana, you have Ghanaian groups in Britain, all building their own economies in Britain, and they're offering alternatives to the British people. Now you will have some British people that will agree with it. And the more people begin to look for options besides the British economy, what's going to happen? The British economy will lose its economic relevancy over Britain, and now Britain will be divided, and now you will have tribal wars in Britain because everyone wants to fight to maintain their own economy. That's why when it comes to migration, most countries are quite conservative. They're open to migration as long as the migration does not challenge the status quo. What happens in the European Union since 2014, that's quite an exception. And I'm not saying that in a positive sense. That wasn't quite smart of the EU leaders to do, to allow all that mass migration into European communities that were already facing economic and demographic challenges, and now you allow all those migrants in. That's why you have so much anxiety amongst Europeans now. That's why the right-wing movement is increasing. That's why populism is increasing. That's why racism has a comeback. All of that because people are frightened. And they should be. So, let me see if I missed something from the live chat. No, I haven't missed anything. So, being economically relevant is not only about survival, it's also about using common sense. So, how do you build economic relevancy? You don't need a big sack with money to do it. You don't even need much money to begin with. What you need to build economic relevancy is you need to have a central ambition. That's one. For those that have pen and paper with them, pick it up and note these things. I'll wait a minute and a half to get your pen and paper. Let me know if you have your pen and paper, then we'll continue. Good, someone has their pen and paper? Okay, then if you don't have pen and paper, you can also write it as a note on your computer afterwards. Okay, it goes like this. You need a central ambition. One, that central ambition has to be something you're aiming for. For example, I'm going to use an example from South America during the time of independence. I'm going to use that as an example because it's an obvious example of how it failed. So I'm going to use the failure of independent Colombia to show you how it should be done. Okay, so you need to have a central ambition. In the case of the people in South America, in around 1810, 1811, you had those people that rioted against Spanish rule, and they had this ambition: we need to get rid of the Spanish king because the Spanish government is unstable. We can't have this. So that was a central ambition. So you had many people dissatisfied with life in South America that joined this in what we today call Colombia. And they rioted. Oh, they had many riots. So many riots that they shut down the local administration of the Spanish in South America. And because of that, you had criminals on the loose, you had predators going around like crazy. So their ambition backfired in making themselves the target of predators amongst them. It became so bad that the next viceroy of Nueva Granada was diverted away from South America towards Mexico back then. Later, the Spanish Navy came and shut down all the raids was going on, but that's how you see that they had a central ambition. Okay, that's one thing you need. Next to a central ambition is you need to be willing to count the cost. And that is what those independence warriors did not do. They did not. So things went wrong. And later, after Spain restored order, you still have people that want this independence thing. So they got it eventually under Simon Bolivar, but so they got the validation in October 1819, when news arrived that Spain granted Colombia its independence. But what happened was that, okay, you wanted to, your ambition was getting rid of the Spanish, even though you're Spanish yourself. But okay, that was your ambition. What now? Oh, we have no foreign diplomats. We have no diplomats. We have no embassies over the world. We have no navy. We don't even have a fiscal policy. We don't have experience internationally. So which role will we play as this country Colombia in the world? As Nueva Granada, as New Granada, we were the main part of the Spanish Empire in South America. And because of that, all over the world, people came here for trade because we were relevant to the Spanish economy, which governed the world. But now that we're not part of that world economy anymore, that connect us to Asia and to all other continents, why would people come to trade with us? So the costs were not considered. And because of that, Colombia became independent in 1819, and in 1830 it fell apart, due to civil wars. There was an ambition, but ambition was based on a castle in the air. It wasn't based on the reality. So have a central ambition, count the costs. That's what Christ also said, count the costs. Third thing is, you need to have a few people that will be the face of the community, and you'll need the people that will become the backbone of the community. The people that are the face are the ones who have wealth or they have something to show off, and then you have people who are the backbone, who are the one making the decisions about the finances. The ones making the decision about the finances should not be seen. They should remain on the background. And those that are seen are those that are spending the finances. And the community or the group then sides with those that make the decisions about the finances, while people on the outside think that it's those who spend the finances openly are the ones deciding. And that's how people begin to agree with the vision. And because they agree with the vision, they now want to invest emotionally, mentally, eventually financially. So what happens then is people from that community will prefer products and services from their own above others. Their economic model is biased, as all economic models are. And because they do this, they become a spiritual force as a group. And once they become a spiritual force as a group, it's very hard to break them down. When people do this, there's a lot they can accomplish as a group. And you don't need a very big group, do it like 2,000, 3,000 people. With only 100 people, you can already do this. You can be a small group of 100 people, and you can already have a political impact on your environment. It's about becoming a spiritual force together. And again, what you need for it is a common ambition. You need to count the cost, so you need to be realistic about it. Then you need you need a face of the movement or the group, and you need a backbone. And once you have both the face and the backbone, now the rest of the group members are motivated and they'll prefer their own above others, and that's how it circulates. And once the backbone of the group acquires more resources like land, house, and all of that, they will distribute them amongst the group members, and now the group members now will do the favor by empowering others. So now you will have a cash flow that will circulate within the group, and because it keeps circulating within the group, all the other cash that comes in will continue to circulate, and that's how it becomes bigger and bigger and stronger. And the children that are born from that community do the same thing, and that's how it's transferred from one generation to the next. That's how generational wealth is transferred. Now, before I continue, do you understand what I just explained? Let me know in the live chat. Good. That's how you build a local economy. You don't need €1,000,000. You don't need a business plan. You don't need those pagan rituals. You just need, I'm going to repeat it because repetition is crucial for learning. a central ambition. It doesn't have to be something big like we need to take down the Illuminati. It can also be something like we want strong families, or we want better male and female relationships. It can be a small ambition as long as if it's a firm ambition. That's practical. That's one thing. Second thing is you need to count the costs. You need to be realistic, knowing that this is going to face resistance. Thirdly, in a group, have a few people that become the face of it and some that remain in the background. Let the ones in the background make the decisions, and the ones that are the face presenting the group and spending the little bit of money there is. And then people, because you are a force already, you'll begin to attract people. And the face and the backbone has to be men. This is not sexist, this is how it works spiritually. Men are magnetic spiritually. So when men form groups and they energize it, it becomes magnetic. It attracts other people. So when the magnetic strength is working, you'll get more people that will fall in your sphere of influence. And because you're relevant, people cannot ignore you. And because they can't ignore you, you'll have people getting along with you. And that's how you extend and extend. That's how you build a local economy. And that's how you extend local economy in building a country. And that's how you also build empires. But in the world, the pagans that govern this world, they use blood sacrifice to speed up the process. Because the process I've just explained is natural, but it doesn't have to take long, but you'll have to face a lot of challenges to keep it smooth eventually. And in the world, pagans don't want to go through all of that. They just want it to happen right now, at ease. That's why they ask for demonic aid, and for demonic aid, they sacrifice other people's lives. That's why blood sacrifice is so popular in the world, because they don't want to trust God, nor God's blueprint. So now you know how they establish empires, whether it's a political empire like the British Empire, Spanish Empire, Norwegian Empire, or Chinese Empire. Those are political ones. And with political empires, you'll always have to deal with some blood sacrifice in this world, because the world is run by devil worshippers. There can also be a business empire. For example, a company that provides services in a big area. Or it can be a small cartel that arranges the production and export of oranges, for example. Whatever type of empire, or maybe it's not an empire, maybe it's an estate, something that's a local influence. That's how you do it. Too often, when we want to start our estates, or we want to start our businesses, want to start our local economies, too often we look at, where do we get the money? Where do we get the buildings? We look at things from a slavish point of view. So we operate out of lack mentally. That must shift, because the local economy will be a visualization. It will be a simulation of what's in here. That's why it's called a project, because you project the ambition that's here. So if here is fearful, if here is slavish, then you will only get misery when it works out. The economy begins here. So here needs to be shifted around. So once you have the local economy, you can start with less than 100 people. It should be men being the backbone and the face of it that energizes it. And the women can be there to complement the magnetic pull of the men. So women are important also, but the backbone as well as the face of the economy has to be men. That's how it works. So once you have the local economy, now you can think, okay, how are we going to extend this? Or we can get more land. And once you are a group, once you form a spiritual force as a group, you'll see that it will become far more easier to get material things in the earth realm. When you are on your own as an individual, you want to get a plot of land or achieve things, you'll face a lot of resistance by existing spiritual forces. Because every group is a spiritual force. Yes, every group is a spiritual force. Yes. So if you are on your own want to achieve things, you have to deal with the possible resistance of all those spiritual forces. But the moment you are part of a spiritual force yourself, and as a group you seek to achieve something, spiritually you'll be able to crush down resistance far more easily and you'll get things done. So there is no such thing as a self-made millionaire or a self-made people don't exist. First of all, you don't make yourself because you're not God. That's one. You did not make yourself speak your native language. You didn't even give yourself your own first name. You couldn't even choose whether you were born a male or a female. So you didn't make yourself. And when it comes to finances and economics, nobody is self-made. Everyone who succeeds in finances and in an economy, they are part of some spiritual force. And as part of some spiritual force, namely a social group, there is some spiritual cover, whether it's a paranormal cover, that's a charm, or whether it's a cover from the Holy Spirit. Nobody can come out of thin air and they're making it. Does not happen. It never happened, it doesn't happen today, and will never happen because that's not possible. So anyone who claims they're self-made, they're preaching a false gospel to you. Before I continue, do you understand what I've explained till now? Let me know in the live chat. Good. Good. People understand it? So now you understand why those devil worshippers don't want you to understand what I just explained onto you. That's why they want to withhold this knowledge from you. Because what happens now is that most people are conditioned by this Prussian school system, because the school system we have today originates in Prussia. Prussia was a very militaristic German society. Prussia was a militaristic kingdom that overtook almost all the German-speaking peoples and established the German Empire. And it's from the Prussian Empire that you later had Nazi Germany, which was a continuation of the Prussian militarism. Prussia as a country was abolished in 1947. That's why people don't know much about it, but Prussia was very militaristic, and the school system we have today originates in Prussia. And Prussia was quite a pagan society also. So this Prussian school system, which is modeled after the Greek gods also, it crushes you mentally and makes you think you're nothing. And by making you think you're nothing implies that you can't accomplish anything together with other people. So it demotivates you to cooperate and collide with others to build each other up. It breaks you down so that you will think you're nothing. So now you look up to some warlock to feel like you're something. Those mega pastors, those businessmen at the top, they're all warlocks. So it's a scam. And because of this scam, people now adhere far more easily to those structures of violence. And before you know it, those structures of violence they are crushing the population, as happened in the 1930s and 1940s, as happened later in Southeast Asia, as is happening right now. Yes, I'm saying it's happening right now. People are in denial, but it's happening. So, what is the alternative of fighting tyranny? Because fighting tyranny will exhaust you and it will empower and validate the tyranny. What do? Establish your local economy. The more local economies are established here and there, using the current resources of society, what's going to happen? Tyrants won't be able to crush the people anymore so easily because they left all those local economies that you need to fight against. And that is what's needed. And look at this. When you have your economic relevancy, there is one thing you must absolutely do. It's a must, or else you can just forget about your own economy. That is, you must remain biased to your own ambition. And your ambition is the ambition of the community. So it's not an ego trip, it's the ambition of that economy, that local economy. You have to prefer it. So if you have 10 euros left, what are you going to do with the 10 euros? Are you going to some Chinese restaurant, spending all of it? Or are you going to some cafeteria that's owned by someone from your group? Or are you going there to spend it? If you take that 10 euros or $10 if you're in the United States and you spend it on a Chinese restaurant, what's going to happen? You'll be contributing to the economy of that Chinese community. But people in that Chinese community, when they have money left, they'll go to other Chinese businesses and they'll spend it over there. And those people from that Chinese business, when the money is spent over there, they'll spend it in other Chinese projects. And that's how the Chinese community over there keeps circulating the wealth amongst themselves. So even if let's say one of the Chinese families has a father that's a drunkard and he's gambling all the time. When he goes to gamble, he gambles with Chinese criminals. And those Chinese criminals will use that same Chinese community for money laundering. So even the criminal money is used back into the community. So that's why that's why they're so powerful wherever they go. Because they train their own to preserve the economic relevancy of the Chinese people above all. That's how they're trained from birth. And because of that, even if they become criminal, they'll become criminal with other Chinese, and as criminals, when they have money, they'll spend that money, criminal money, in the Chinese community, and for money laundering, they will launder the money to other Chinese businesses so that the Chinese community will benefit from the criminal activity. So even they're criminals and doing crooked stuff, they still consider the relevancy of their community. That's how they are trained. And that's why you have Chinatowns all over the place, and that's why China, despite its internal weaknesses, manages to stand till this day. And believers should be far smarter than that. So, when you go to pray in line with God's blueprint. Imagine yourself as a part of a local, Christ-centered economy. Today, local can also be through the internet, but as long as it's local. Imagine yourself as part of it. And imagine you and the other believers as part of that community prospering. Haven't you realized that when the Apostle Paul was establishing those local churches, that he addressed every church as a whole? The Corinthian, the community of Corinthian believers he addressed as one. The group of Galatian believers addressed as one. Why? Because they were all local communities with local economies. Some economies went well, others went bad, but he addressed them as economies. In the book of Revelations, the 7 churches are addressed as local economies. And that's how believers, after the death of first apostles, they took over the world's economy. And they crushed the grip of Satan on the human species. And that's why uh, the Roman Empire developed this Christian faith called the Catholic system to continue sacred script on the masses. And because believers back then had so many local economies, there was not one group they could attack to bring it all down. And that is the problem with many of those alternative movements in the world. Many of those alternative movements are modeled after the Greek military system, in which you have one guy at the top and the rest of the movement is formed like a pyramid. When you have that, you only have to attack the top and everything falls apart. But if you do it with the model from the Old Testament for the ancient Israelites, if you use that model, you'll have maybe 50 local economies of believers. And now the beast system wants to come with the mark of the beast. Oh, and what's going to happen? Oh dear, we want to enforce this tyrannical policy on those believers, but hold on a minute. They're not stuck in those pagan churches anymore. You have over 50 local economies, and they are even able to start their own currencies if they want. Oh. They'll be thinking, what are you going to do with these people? If we go after them with violence, we'll be exposing how failed we are. And we'll lose our momentum with the public. But if you tolerate this, people are going to ask, why are you the central authorities if you have people with local economies and are doing quite well? So that is why the system hates believers walking by faith. Because we are able to shut down the violence of the system without using violence, but just being practical. And because the system relies on violence, we shut down the violence means they have nothing left. And that's how we ought to do it. And here's one thing about the United States that's positive. In the United States, all the 50 states, you didn't have 50 states back then, but all the states that existed while the United States was developing as its union, all those states had their own local economies, and within states also had divisions. And you even had states that had their own currencies. They all used the dollar, but the dollars from Florida were different from the dollars in Illinois, for example, or the dollars in Texas were different than the dollars in California. It was a dollar, but they printed their own dollars. So if they needed to boost the economy, they could just do it by printing more cash to boost the local economy. But later, the British Empire, with the satanic Catholic family called the Rothschilds, wanted to shut down the economic leverage of those believers in the United States. And that's how you get the central bank coming up. A central bank in itself, there's nothing wrong with the concept, but this central bank was governed by this cabal, by this satanic, by this satanic cult. And Central Bank of the United States is still governed by them. So it was a rip-off. And what happened, they told the American people, if you want to remain stable as a region, we need to cooperate, which is true. So how do we cooperate? Hand in all your gold and silver at the central bank, so then we can regulate the economy. And for some dumb reason, most Americans did it. They handed in their silver and their gold and other precious metals. And what do you think happens? The Rothschilds were thinking, the people fell for the scam. So they shipped away the silver, gold, all of that. And in place, they now decided how much paper money was printed and where it would be spent. So the local economies were crushed. Even on a state level, you had no autonomy anymore. And now you had this satanic cult from London governing the finances of the United States. But people still were thinking the United States is an independent union of republics. It wasn't. The moment they installed a central bank, all the economic autonomy people in the United States had were gone. Gone. And people were not even aware of it. Oh, Black Wall Street. Oh, Black Wall Street, they destroyed it completely. Because the black community in the United States, they refused to give up their economic relevance. See, because they knew that just a few generations back they were slaves. So they thought, no, we're not going to give up our economic relevancy. No way. So what happened? They bombarded. Airplanes were new, and they tested the military use of airplanes on Tulsa, Oklahoma, destroyed Black Wall Street, and that also led to the collapse of the United States economy in general. They did it. That's how they did it. And today, most people have forgotten about this bombing of Black Wall Street because they've covered it up, but they can't hide it anymore. It's coming out. That's how they do it. So, you understand now why I kept on saying in my videos, we need to be economically relevant. Someone even began to, I won't say swear at me, but someone began to attack me one time in the comment section saying, Rashid, what are you talking about becoming economically relevant? No, we should be economically relevant because everything is controlled by the Jesuits, by the wizards. We should just focus on going to heaven. You know what I did? Block. Whoever the individual was cannot comment anymore on my videos. If you come with such darkness, you're out. Straight up. We as believers, the earth is our home. We ought to reflect heaven, that is God's happiness on the earth, overcoming violence and darkness in the here and now. And if you come promoting fear, you're out. I'll roll out the red carpet and invite you to leave. So I won't put up with people suggesting harm on my channel. You're out, straight up. The same you should do also. So, now that we know how to build economic relevancy, I'm going to focus a bit more on how to maintain it. I already said you have to be biased. The second thing is you must weed out Judases. Oh, and for a lot of people, this becomes very uncomfortable. What Christ was doing, let's focus on Christ for a moment, okay? Our Lord and Savior. He incarnated in Mary's womb without any spermatozoa, because he's God himself that went into that egg cell and it developed, okay? So he incarnated himself and he was born as a human being. He was just like a little baby, less than 2 years old, and the government tried to kill him already. Why? Because listen, when Christ was born, and those kings from the east came to look for him, and they arrived in Jerusalem, stated they were looking for the king of the Judeans that was born. Well, actually, king of the Jews, but Jews is a Greek-Roman term. So when they came, all those people from the east wanted to see this king that was born. Herod and the Romans tried to kill him, but they couldn't find him. They killed all the small boys in Bethlehem. Why? Because they knew if people are willing to come all the way from Asia to here to see the birth of this little baby, and they also brought gifts, Because remember, those kings from the east came, and they came with gold, they came with spices, they came with gifts for Christ. And because they were kings, they didn't come with a little bag, they came with a lot. Because the Savior of the world was born. So when they came with all that wealth, the Roman authorities and King Herod knew, okay, whoever this little baby is, he's already attracting wealth, and he's just a little baby. What if his parents receive this wealth and this guy grows up? Within a few years, he'll be having his own kingdom here, the throne in Rome, and shutting down the Roman Empire over here. And when that happens, we're in trouble. So Christ was already attracting attacks when he was a little child. So Joseph brought him and Mary to Egypt. Later they settled in Nazareth, which was a ghetto. Okay, they settled there. When Christ was 12 years old, he already began to do his economic activity, but his step-parents couldn't understand it. So to avoid public contention, he was submissive to his step-parents. And when he was when he approached age 20, he moved out of Nazareth and he went to Capernaum. And in Capernaum, Christ worked as a craftsman. Yes, Christ worked over there. So Christ, he built furniture, he built he built houses, he did work and he got paid for it. And there, he also had his own place where he stayed. So Christ was a young man in his 20s, being economically active. And why? And he was saving money. Later, when he reached 30, he decided it's time to do the mission. He stopped his work and he went to John the Baptist to go through that symbolic ritual, which wasn't needed. He went through it to show everyone that everyone needs to follow him. And he did. And since then, he has been using. He had used the money he gathered with his economic activity to do the will of the Heavenly Father. And what happened? He gathered men, which were disciples, 70 of them. They were all men who were economically active also. From those men, unfortunately, most left, 12 remained, of which one betrayed him. But all the men that he selected were men that were active. Christ did not select someone that was laying on his bed all day long drinking alcohol. Oh, Jesus, oh, you want to bring the kingdom of God? Well, it will happen. Christ didn't look for people like that. No. Christ looked for people that were active. And he looked for men who were active. And once he had a group of men who were active, the economy began to manifest. Christ did signs, wonders, and all of that. And things began to roll. And he was prosperous. Christ was a moving economy. And this moving economy scared a lot of people. So they realized, oh dear, this guy from Nazareth, this black guy from Nazareth, because he was a Judean, and Judeans are the ethnicity they call Negroes or blacks, not Hamites from Africa, but you get what I'm saying. So he had this white supremacist system, the Roman Empire, which worshipped this blonde guy, Apollo, and think, who was this black guy with those black men from that place, ghetto over there in Judea? How come they're so prosperous? How come they are shaking our satanic empire? So both Rome as well as the sellouts of the Judean population, they turned on Christ to get him killed, to scatter his movement. Little did they know that that is what Christ was waiting for, so that he could glorify himself by rising from the dead. So they fell for their own trap, and Christ overruled it. And Christianity is the result of that. So real Christianity is a continuation of the economy that Christ established. Christ did not look for investors. He did not look for large plots of land to build big buildings. He wanted men that were active to form a spiritual force together. And this spiritual force was backed up by himself as the Holy Spirit. Let's see if I miss a question. Okay. What happened to the gifts that were given to Christ? Well, his parents used it for financial reasons, but, well, his parents, they settled in a ghetto. Maybe it was a practical choice to get away from the government that was settled in Jerusalem. That may be so, but settling in a ghetto with all the gifts that were given to Christ, well, it worked well for Joseph and Mary. They had more children, they had many more children, and the children had a house. So they were not actually poor, but because we're in a ghetto, it kind of worked out that much of the gifts were wasted. So Joseph and Mary didn't use their discernment well. There were other places where they could have settled, but okay, the Most High saw they were settled in Nazareth, so it happened. So Christ grew up in a ghetto. But he did not stay in the ghetto, he moved when he had the opportunity. You see now how powerful it is to agree with Christ and follow his example. Before I continue, did you all understand what I've just explained? Let me know in the live chat. Good. You understand it. When you follow God's blueprint that he himself enacted, oh dear, demons are becoming upset. Demons are frightened. The wizards that govern this world they're having headaches because they think, oh dear. Now you have this Rashid teaching them, and now you have this Avert over there having his own economy with he has 80 people part of his economy, and now he's influencing people in the area where he lives. Oh, you have this Maria over there, somewhere in the United States doing the same thing, but her husband works with her, so it's still a stable structure. Oh, it's also having Malawi. Oh, God. Oh, but their God is saying, but they think, what are we going to do about this? Well, that's how it ought to be. The world's leaders should not be pleased with us. They shouldn't. Because if they would be pleased with us, something is wrong. I know for sure that all of you who are watching this, that will put it in practice, you'll have a lot of warlocks, witches. You'll have a lot of pedophile rings. You'll have a lot of dark forces. It means human groups that are in the negative that will be very angry with you. And they're about to lose it. But because you walk in the cover of Christ, they can't kill you. A lot of you are going to face a lot of anger by this world for doing what I just explained to you. Do it anyway because you have Christ's cover, and that is God's will. They persist in darkness, let them devour themselves and ruin themselves. Nobody forced them or told them to persist in darkness. They want to inflict their misery on you and the rest of us. No, refuse their misery. Walk by faith. And look at what I'm saying to you now, believers. What I've been explaining here. I didn't make it all up. I've looked at what Christ did. and I'm modeled after Christ, who is our King. So I've seen that throughout history, communities that followed God's blueprint ended up well, and those who went along with this Greek system, they were devoured. Listen, when I wanted to do this, being age 19, age 20, the Holy Spirit delayed it because I lacked some understanding here and there. I had too many Judases around me. I had too many snakes pretending to be sheep of Christ. They're all gone now, and I've continued. So when you begin to construct your local economy, don't resist the Holy Spirit when He's bringing you through difficulties. Sometimes the Holy Spirit will lead you in difficulty so that you will lose enemies. Because those people are enemies of God. So when you do God's will to be prosperous, they'll hunt you down to kill you and to tear you apart because they are upset with God Himself. They're cowards. So often God will lead you in difficulty so that those people will trap themselves and you continue. Sometimes you need to cross the Red Sea. And once you cross the Red Sea, there's no turning back, only forwards. When you have local economies with economic relevance, you'll have more mental ease because it's a circulating economy. When you have families, you have better marriages because it will be ease. And when you're at ease, the finance will be better because remember, finances are an extension of your sexuality. So if you have a local economy that circulates, your sexuality will be healthier, more stable, so you'll have better marriages, and when children are born, you'll have happier and more stable families. You will have happier and healthier adults. So that is the solution to this Greek system that seeks to rape all men worldwide. Because either you're participating in God's will, in which will operate in life in abundance, or you're enabling this collective rape of the male population. It's one of the two. Yes, we're covered. Praise the Lord. So, now you know what you have to do. Build and maintain economic relevance. And once your local economy is working, expand. Don't think, well, we are 200 people now and we have 3 farms and things are working well. No. Look for another farm elsewhere. We must be diverse and practical as believers. If we're not diverse and practical as believers, the Greek system will have some advantage over us. Don't you know that criminal organizations that kidnap and traffic women do this? They don't worship God, but they abuse the blueprint of God for their economic, for their filth that they are spreading around, and it works for them. So why are believers adhering to this Greek system that worships the beast? Why are we submitting to the beast system if we have the blueprint given by Christ to operate in? Why do you think I keep on writing novels? I've published several novels already. Some of you purchased some of them. I could stop. I'm an established novelist already. But I'll keep on writing more and more because it's not about me. It's about doing God's will and glorifying Him on the earth. And because of that, I remain active so that there is an economy that's established due to my activity. And that economy will be there to glorify Christ and to benefit other believers. And by doing that, the Holy Spirit will be shutting down evil through Rashid's economic activities. So my economic activities are not about me, it's about doing the will of the Heavenly Father. Remember that I said in the beginning, nobody is self-made. So get this self-made crap out of your mind. Get this personal space, private life BS out of your mind. You're meant to be part of a collective. But you're meant to rely on Christ. So be active. Be active till Christ comes. Don't think, oh, there, the B system is coming with the microchip. They're going to get rid of cash money. So what? If they do it and just believe it with the local economies, we can build our own print. We can build our own press to print our own currency if needed. If we have enough farms and enough ships of our own, we'll be able to ignore the B system and get to print our own thing and do our own stuff. We can even do it digitally if we are advanced like that. So why do you care if you want to abolish cash money, which is one thing they cannot do, because once they abolish cash money, money will lose its grip as a mental construct. And once that happens, you have chaos. So they cannot get rid of cash money. They'll have to keep cash money around, but can only motivate people to go digital, because digital, they can shut down more easily. Why are Christians, or why are believers so afraid of the microchip? They've been talking about this microchip, the world leader, since the year 2000. It's still not here. Because that chip is meant to scare you in submitting to the beast. Instead of you thinking, okay, you want to shut down cash money? Okay, believers, do your thing. Let's invent our own currencies. And when time comes that it comes for us, oh, it's written in scripture that Michael, one of the heavenly princes, will rise for us. That same Michael that led the holy revolt against Lucifer in the heavens, he and the holy enchanted beings will back us up, led by Christ. So bring it on. We'll walk by faith. That's how believers ought to be. What I see now is believers becoming depressed because what they think is going to happen. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Walk by faith. Walk in it. Because this Greek system, it only has sexual confusion as its fuel to continue. Without sexual confusion, it would collapse within days. But to keep sexual confusion in the human species, you need them to be frightened. You need them in anxiety. That's why they don't want us to have local circulating economies. They especially don't want believers, male believers, to lead local circular economies, because that will threaten them. That's why you have the Hebrew Israelites, which is a group which is a collection of groups in the United States now. I'm not promoting them, but the Hebrew Israelites are now developing their own local economies. And that's why the media began to attack them. Because they realized, oh dear, those men, not only do they know more about biblical history than most people, not only have they uncovered many of our lies, but they're also obeying the blueprint of Christ. Even though they're errors in their doctrine, because they hold on to a lot of things from the Old Testament they should let go of, they're still following the blueprints. They're very effective. Oh dear. If you allow this to happen, they'll be emptying our prisons, and they'll be making our police officers unemployed, and they'll be shutting down police brutality. Oh dear, we can't allow this to happen. So that's why the Hebrew Israelites are under attack now. Well, it's sad because they are holding on to some things from the Old Testament they need to let go of. That's the weight they carry that God doesn't want them to carry. But nevertheless, they are effective. You need to be effective too. That's why I keep making these videos, because I want you to be effective. Be effective. Obey God's blueprint. And if people say that you're discriminating, so be it. The world discriminates against us believers all the time. And they don't care. So this live stream has been 1.5 hours. I'm not making it too long because people that watch back, I want them to be able to learn and to make notes. So I'm going to stop this live stream now. Build your local economy. Be economically relevant. And from there, all the rest will come. Political relevance, cultural relevance, that will all follow. Be at peace, believers. I'll see you.